Hello, everybody. I'm very, very pleased to say that we have got a special guest on Ale and Radio and also, obviously, the Ale and Audio podcast today. Now, as of Thursday, the 18th of, I think it was, no, sorry, Friday it was, Thursday the 19th of September, I believe it was, Cask Ale Week began, which is obviously a huge celebration of Cask Ale and also a big awareness event, really, just to sort of raise the awareness again and make sure people remember Cask Ale and just how great it is. And I have got the absolutely perfect person to chat to today about that. It's Annabel Smith, who is a beer sommelier. She is also the Cask Marque head of training as well. And obviously a big representative for Cask Ale. So let's bring Annabel in. How are you, Annabel?
Hey, I'm very good, thank you.
Thanks for joining us today. You're the perfect person to speak to. Before we start talking about Cask Ale Week, we are going to get you on the show again to talk to you in more detail because I always make a point of reading a bit about our guests before we before we speak and so on. And there's so much to talk to you about. A bit in the same way, I mean, listeners will remember the interview that we did with Jane Payton, who is just an incredible lady, and the stuff that she's done in the beer industry and all that. Again, we could be here all day with yourself talking about the stuff that you've done as well. So but yeah, just tell us a little bit about yourself before we start talking about Cask Ale Week.
Oh, I think you've introduced me beautifully. So, yeah, my day job is I train a lot of publicans, and that's my job with Cask Marque to make sure they know what they're doing with cask beer. And I'm also a beer sommelier, so I don't just restrict myself to talking about cask beer. It's all kinds of beer, and trying to get people to kind of understand beer a little bit more, and find a flavour that they like and pick a beer style that I think will go well with their takeaway on a Friday night. So, yeah, in a nutshell, that's what I do for a living.
Excellent. And obviously, for anybody who wants to find out more about Annabel, I've put your website up on screen for you there, but it's
Oh, thanks.
beerbell.co.uk because you're a beer trainer as well, aren't you? So you actually
Yeah.
train and educate people on beer as well, in a similar way to what Jane does. And yeah, so please do check out Annabel's website. Obviously, what we're going to speak to you about today is Cask Ale Week, which is obviously
Yes.
running through till September the 29th. I know this has been something that's been going for quite a while, hasn't it?
It has. It's been going for over a decade now. So that kind of week in September, well, it's more than a week, isn't it? It's 10 days. It's really embedded in people's minds now. So it's just got bigger and bigger every year. More breweries getting involved, more pub companies getting involved. And it's really all about celebrating a very quintessentially British drink, which is cask beer.
Exactly, and we have an audience who are they are largely craft beer fans, I think, and that's all right for us to say that. But I know there's a lot of people there who love their cask beer as well. There's a lot of people who have the kind of things that I've got in my shed, which is this Pints 365 pump where we can kind of try and replicate the
Yeah.
cask beer, with the beer in a bag stuff and all that. So there's a lot of people out there who love it, and also I think it's worth remembering that a lot of the keg beer that we're drinking now in sort of craft beer form. Actually, a lot of that came from cask, didn't it? If you think about it, it's
Yeah.
sort of origins.
Yeah, I like to think that cask was the original craft, because number one, it's full of flavour. Number two, it needs some looking after in the pub to get it absolutely right. But when you get that perfect, good quality pint of cask ale, there is absolutely nothing like it. And you can only get it in the pub. So I think you've got a double whammy there. You have to go to the pub to drink it. Then you get talking to other cask beer drinkers. And it's just part of our society. It's part of our culture.
And particularly those, proper traditional boozers as well. They're the ones that really do that so well, aren't they?
Yeah, they are. And don't you find that sometimes you might walk into a bar or a pub and where the hand pulls are missing, you think, but this isn't a proper pub.
Yeah.
It signifies that we've got real beer on in here where you see a hand pull.
And the fact that they're stored in the kind of like natural conditions as to what the building was built for, with the cellars and the old, it's kind of that's the other part of it as well, and that's what makes cask beer so like original, doesn't it?
It is, yeah. That's a really good point about stored in those original cellars, because those original cellars they were actually cooled down to perfect cask
Hmm.
temperature. It's one of the myths I try and explode about cask for non-cask drinkers, that they'll say, "Oh, I don't drink it because it's warm or it's flat." That whole warm thing is absolute rubbish. It's served at between 11 and 13 degrees. Now, if you went out in your car and your car temperature read 11 degrees and you
You'd be
stepped out of
freezing.
the car, you go, gosh, that's quite cold,
Yeah.
really. And it's just a myth that people kind of say, well, it's room temperature. Well, no, room temperature for most people's houses and pubs is over 20 degrees. The cellar below is always a lot cooler than that.
I
Yeah,
mean, it's coming up to. I mean, I think the time of the year that we celebrate this month as well, this week as well, is a really good time of year because I'll admit myself, when it gets to kind of the summer months, I do tend to go towards the sort of nice German lagers and summer
yeah.
lagers and things like that, which are absolutely great in their own right, and obviously craft beer as well, keg beer, because it is naturally cooler and you want something more really cold and refreshing. But when you get to this time of year, it going into that sort of like autumny sort of winter time, I always head back to the cask beer because it's just brilliant and amazing. And again, the temperatures are going to be really cool as well, aren't they? So for those people that maybe do have that little bit of opinion about cask beer and its temperature, definitely give it a try over the sort of from now onwards. Basically, you'll fall in love with it, won't you, Annabelle?
You will, and I think that's why Cask Ale Week has landed at just the
Yeah.
right time. If we tried to do something like Cask Ale Week in May, um,
Hmm.
it perhaps wouldn't be as successful as it's become, because you're right, people do tend to um, they go towards the cold and fizzy drinks,
Yeah.
something very thirst quenching. But then, as soon as you come into autumn, you think, right, I love those lovely flavours, and there are a wealth of flavours that you can get from Cask Ale, right from kind of lovely citrusy, grapefruity flavours through to your chocolatey stouts, and you have got so much choice, and it's great to see so many pubs getting involved this year.
That's it. And you can't. I worked in a pub, many years ago. And I used to love, coming in from the start of my shift and seeing what beers they had on the pump and what pump clips they had on. Because obviously, we've all got these fancy cans and everything now that have got all these wacky designs on them. But the original of that was always the pump clip, wasn't it, on the front of
Yeah.
on a beer pump.
Yeah, and isn't it great when you walk into a pub and you perhaps haven't had a brand of cask ale for quite a long time, and you walk in and you see it on the pump and you go, "Oh yes, I'm going to have a pint of that," and it kind of triggers loads and loads of memories as well. Certain beers remind you of certain good times, or
That's
when you
it.
were with people.
And they
Yeah.
work very well seasonally as well, because you will get like beers that are designed for a season, won't you? And have got a certain purpose in mind.
Yes, yeah. Do you know what? I can see us moving away from that a little bit in
Hmm.
the cask industry. That a lot of pubs used to think, right, so throughout the summer months, I'm going to put on my pale ales, I'm going to put on those light and spritzy beers. And then as you move towards winter, let's go towards the more darker beers like your stouts and your porters. But actually, it's throughout the year now. You see lots and lots of dark beers actually on the pumps in summer as well. Um,
And that
so
offers people the variety then, doesn't it, as well?
yes, it does.
Yeah, excellent. So, I mean, do you have a favorite go to? This is a hard question, I imagine. It's a really tough question, but do you have a ten? Have you got a favorite beer when it comes to cask beer? Is there one that really stands out and that's just top of your list?
That is such a difficult question to answer, because it depends what kind of day it is, depends
Yeah.
what the weather's like, depends what I'm having to eat. Um, I know that I could probably name a brand today, and then I'd want to ring you up tomorrow and say, "Change my mind." Um, it
Or,
is
or what about a style then? Because again, I know the style that you drink again might depend on at the time, or or what kind of day it is. But have you got like a go-to style? Is there some sort of cask beer that you tend to go for when it comes to style?
I do tend to like stronger ales.
Hmm.
So by stronger, I mean usually above 5%. I like my darker ales as well.
Mm.
So if I gave you an example, I love Adnams Broadside on cask because it's strong, it's fruity. That is just such a brilliant beer. But then if I went for a classic, I'd go for a pale ale like Timothy Taylor's Landlord.
Oh
You
yeah.
just can't go wrong with it.
Exactly. Yeah. I mean, Timothy Taylor's Landlord. It's kind of got the. It's got the little bit of a Guinness appeal about it among people, hasn't
Yeah.
it? In that sort of like, it's the solid go-to standard. It's kind of picking that. He's picked that up, hasn't it? And I don't know if it's just me, but I think I've seen a bit of a resurgence of it as well, a little bit.
Yeah, it is. It is one of the top selling Cask Ale
Yeah.
brands in the UK. But I think what a lot of the, I think what we've got to remember is when cask beer leaves a
Hmm.
brewery, it's not a finished product.
No.
And the quality of that beer gets left to the publican. So they need to know what they're doing with it to serve it as the brewer intended it to taste like. Um, and a lot of the breweries, including the ones that I'm talking about, Adnams and Timothy Taylor's, they spend so much time, so much effort on making sure their beer is in perfect condition when it's passed across that bar. And as you introduced me, I'm head of training at Cask
Yeah.
Marque, but Cask Marque have done a lot over the last 25 years to kind of meet the needs of the brewers and making sure that they're going in, they're testing the cask ale on the bar, they're making sure it's the right temperature, making sure that it smells right, it looks right, it tastes right, feeding that information back to the brewers, but also it's almost like a little tick of a guarantee for drinkers that a pub's beer is being tested all the time to make sure that it's great. Because let's face it, we're paying more and more and more for our beer now. Don't you feel let down if you get a pint and you think, that's really not great?
Definitely, because taste's one thing, and it might be the case because obviously beer is subjective into it, and everyone has a different palate and all that kind of thing. But that's one thing, and that's if it's not your thing, fair enough. But when it comes to you just know that the beer's not right because there's something that's either it's not being kept right, it's not being served at
Yeah,
the right temperature, or maybe they've not pulled it through and all that, a little bit at the start of the day or something like that. It is important, isn't it? And I suppose it's like you were saying, it's such a good thing that publicans do get that ability to really take some ownership over what they're selling people.
absolutely. And that is what got me into beer in the first place. And just like your background,
Yeah.
working in a pub, it was a very cask-led pub. And I had such a great boss who wanted to teach me about, right, this is what we need to do with this beer. We need to test it as we go along. Best bit of the job. And that really instilled a passion in me. And then when you pass that beer across to a customer and they go, oh, that's just beautiful. Or you'd say, I've got a firkin of this and it's conditioning in the cellar. It's going to be on Friday. And then they'd all come in on Friday because it was a brand that they really, really wanted to try. It's just such a great feeling. And I mean, all credit to licensees across the country who they do spend an awful lot of time looking after that beer and they're keeping cask beer alive.
Of course, and not through an easy time for them at all. It's
No,
really challenging times, obviously that they're living through. And you mentioned price, and I think one thing to say about cask beer, and this is certainly something that I find affects me, is that cask beer has kind of managed to really maintain a price level compared to kegged beer and
yeah.
all the stuff you get in cans and stuff as well. Why do you think that is?
Oh, now this is a little bit of a sore point in the trade,
Hmm.
in that if you think about the amount of work
Hmm.
that goes into getting cask beer ready, actually it should sell at a far higher price than some of those keg beers, which
Hmm.
are they get delivered and it's plug and play. You
Hmm.
don't have to do anything with it. Um, so from a commercial point of view, it doesn't really make any sense that the product that you're spending the most time on delivers the least profit for you. And again, all credit to publicans that they go, actually, look at it the other way round, that if we have a range of great cask ales on the bar, it brings drinkers in.
Yeah.
And those drinkers will bring other drinkers in. Even if they don't drink cask ale, they might order a G&T, they might order a pint of lager. But actually keeping that price point as it is, a bit lower than keg, it increases a pub's overall profitability, because people go to that pub if they know they're going to get great cask ale.
Yeah, yeah, good point. Yeah, because I mean, like I say, I've been, my local pub. I don't know if you've ever heard of it. Whereabouts are you from, Annabelle? That's a good question. We ought to ask whereabouts you
I
live
am
yourself,
just
or.
south of Leeds, so
Oh,
I'm in
okay.
a little village called Horbury.
Oh, right. Okay, you're not too. Is that like near Wakefield
It
area as
is,
well,
yeah,
sort of thing? So
yeah,
you're blessed with what Ossett Brewery, Jolly Sailor. I think
absolutely,
they're all in that sort of area, aren't they? There might
yeah.
be a few others that I've missed that I'm sure you'll be a lot more aware of, obviously, with you living around there. But I'm from a place called Chapeltown in Sheffield,
Oh
and
yeah,
we have a pub here called The Commercial, which is my local pub, and it has always got at least, I want to say, 6 or 7 different cask lines on at one time,
yeah,
and it's absolutely brilliant. And it's a really traditional pub, but they've done a lot to modernise it as well, done a lot of work inside, kind of modernising it a little bit, still keeping that sort of character and that traditional side of it and stuff. But and they've had, to try and kind of keep up with the younger drinkers and so on, or the more, or someone to say younger, but those that are kind of having more keg and all that kind of the craft
yeah,
beer. They do have a keg beer tap, but they do struggle to get the price. Obviously down to sort of like more reasonable levels, but it's obviously because not the demand isn't there as much, because that pub, everybody wants a cask because they do it so well. And so I go in there, and often I'll not, even though I love trying these different keg beers and craft beers and stuff, I'll always go to the cask because I just know that pub does it so well. um did you so you're involved in helping people train to be able to do that, aren't you?
yes.
So how long have you been doing that for, and is it quite a big, is it quite a lot for people to do?
Um, I've been training people how to look after cask for about 20 years now.
Wow, okay.
Um, yeah, and not just in trade, also kind of, there are a lot of drinkers out there who kind of don't actually know what goes on in that
Yeah.
mysterious cellar to get their beer ready. Um, I absolutely love training people on cask. And it's great when I get a group of people, and the first question I always ask them at the beginning of the day is, right, how many of you drink beer?
Hmm.
And you usually get about half of them going, "Yeah, I'll drink beer," and the other half, "No, I never drink beer." By the end of the day, they are all beer drinkers. Going, you've got to taste cask beer as you're getting it ready to serve to your customers. Always make sure it's in great condition before you kind of serve a pint across the bar. Um, but it's lovely passing on that knowledge, and I hope a lot of them will pass it on to other people that they work with. The more people we can get, talking about cask, and because it is a skill, it's an art looking after it, and we don't want to lose that.
Definitely not. No, I mean, I did the old cellar management because I wanted my own little certificate for the pub
Great.
shed. So I did do a very short cellar management course, and that really, taught me quite a lot about, cellar temperature. I mean, not that I've got a cellar, but obviously, about temperatures and how you keep your beer, how you serve it in the glassware, and how you look after your glassware, because that's important as well, isn't it? I mean,
Yeah, it's that
does that
whole
come as part?
journey.
Yeah, exactly. So from the delivery from the brewery to how you then obviously serve it in the pub, the glassware's involved, is it?
Yeah, yeah. It is. I mean, the way I look at it is, for a drinker, they just see that beer in the glass.
Hmm.
They don't see all the work that goes on behind the scenes, all the hard work. If you serve that beer in a dirty glass or a wrong glass, or you pour it incorrectly, you've undone all of that hard work that you've done in the cellar, because that's the bit that the customer sees. So that glass is as important as what's going on behind the scenes.
Exactly. You mentioned it there as well, pulling the beer. You got
Yeah,
to mention that, because that is also another key part of the whole process, and the fun of when you go to the bar and you ask for a beer and you see the bar person pulling this beer through the pump. Look, it'll always be more fun than somebody just turning a tap, won't it? And
Yes.
we've got to
Yeah.
admit that, haven't we? There's nothing that, and that's why I wanted the sort of pump in my shed, because I wanted that pub feel to it, and you can only get that that sort of, from a hand pulled beer, can't you?
Yeah, you can. And there are all sorts of little quirks on dispensing beer. Big one that I always get asked about is this north-south divide on the way we actually dispense cask beer. So
Yeah.
if I took you for a drink, I don't know, in Brighton tonight, you'd get a loose, frothy head on your cask beer because they don't use sparklers.
Ah, okay. I was
Um,
wondering that which way around they do it. So yeah. Tell us a bit more about the sparklers then.
right. So there is a little bit of kind of history and culture around the sparkler. I'll ask you a question. Whereabouts in the UK do we grow hops?
Whereabouts in the whole of the country, as in
Yeah,
like the region, for example.
yeah.
Um, are they not just are they not everywhere depending on where the farms are? I imagine maybe like Norfolk area might have a
Okay.
lot. That's my
Well,
guess.
it's a very good guess. We're kind of close, but no cigar. Um,
Okay.
we've got we can grow bittering and aromatic hops only in the south of the country.
Ah,
If you
okay,
see
interesting.
hops up here in the
Yeah.
north, they tend to be ornamental hops. They're not
Right.
very good
Okay.
for brewing beer. So if we go back a couple of hundred years, southern breweries could put tons and tons of hops into their beer because they were all grown on their doorstep.
Hmm.
So you kind of, when you made beer, you had lots and lots of hops in there. For the northern brewers, they had to buy hops from the south. And you might be aware of this, but a lot of people say northerners are quite tight. So northern brewers would go, right.
I might get accused of that every now and again.
So northern brewers would only buy the minimum amount of hops to put
Okay.
in their beer. So the sparkler was invented to squeeze all of the hop oil into the head. So when you take a first sip of beer, when you get beer poured through a sparkler, which gives it a tight, creamy head, you get that mouthful of bitterness, but the liquid underneath is really, really malty.
Mm.
And you can have two beers, same brand of beer, pour one through a sparkler, pour one without a sparkler, completely different taste experience. At the end of the
Wow.
day, it's us that's drinking it, it's us that's paying for it. So I always carry a little sparkler when I go and work in the south, and I say,
Oh,
can you
brilliant.
put that on? But as I say, if someone says, I want you to take that sparkler off, do it.
So because you can get different. I mean, with my Pints 365 pump, I got like a range of sparklers. And to be fair, I think some of the which sparkler I use actually depends on the liveliness of the beer sometimes as well, because I can attach a mini keg to
Yes.
this Pints
Yeah.
365. You've got to let it settle and let the
Yeah.
gas out of it and stuff like that. But you can attach a mini keg to it. So in that case, I don't tend to use a sparkler
Okay.
because it'll always still have a little bit of carbonation in it. So you don't want to add more by forcing it through the sparkler. So I tend to not in that case. Otherwise, it just fobs too much if it's come out of a mini keg. But have you got a preferred sparkler? Because I tend to use this one called a creamer. I quite like that one.
Right. Okay. I should have one to hand to show you. It's kind of got like a little nipple on the end of
All
it.
right. Okay.
So you
Yeah.
screw it on and it kind of squeezes the beer through some tiny, tiny holes, creates that nice, tight, creamy head. But
Hmm.
I've got a lovely experiment that I do when I'm training. And you can do this next time you go into the
Yeah.
commercial. Um, when they pour the pint, ask him for a teaspoon and scoop off some of the head and
Okay.
taste it without the beer. And it's intensely bitter. And that just demonstrates how you're squeezing all the hop oil into the head.
That is amazing. I know there'll be people listening to this who'll be trying that. In fact, I know one person straight away will be trying it. He was a guy called Spenno at the Spencer Arms. He loves anything like this, the sort of science and the sort of the background stuff with beer. He'll be straight onto that. I know he will.
Oh, that's
Um,
cool.
Absolutely brilliant. So Cask Ale Week then. So what can
Yes.
people do on Cask Ale Week to really support it?
Right. Okay. So if you're a drinker, you go onto the Cask Ale, just Google Cask Ale Week.
Hmm.
And it'll take you to a Cask Ale Week website, and there's an interactive map on there. So you can see what pubs are participating in Cask Ale Week. So pubs have got loads and loads of different activities going on. So they might have a meet the brewer evening. They might be doing a special beer and food menu throughout Cask Ale Week. The big thing that Cask Marque does is it encourage people to try cask for the first time. And the best way of doing that is saying, do you want a taster? Would you like to try this? It's not giving away free beer. It's just about getting those people who may have misconceptions about cask to go, actually, that's quite nice. I really like that one. So, as I say, Cask Ale Week website is listing all the activities that every pub in the UK is doing. But a really exciting thing is Cask Marque have got an app, a free app called Cask Finder, and it lists all of the Cask Marque accredited pubs in the UK. I get really excited about this because I think this is really kind of techie. Cask Finder has got a scanner on it, and if you walk into a Cask Marque accredited pub, have a look for a certificate on the wall, a certificate of excellence, and it's got a QR code on it. And if you scan that QR code, it logs your visit to that pub. So if you visit 12 new pubs throughout Cask Ale Week, you get a t-shirt.
That
Cask
is
Ale Week
brilliant.
t-shirt.
Love
I
it.
think
Yeah.
it is.
Excellent. That's great. That's a great idea. So that's one way to support it and also get something quite cool from it as well.
Yeah, absolutely. And also it's an opportunity for pubs to really showcase what they're good at, with the backing of a kind of a national campaign behind it. So a lot of it is about visibility.
And of course, you mentioned the website, but on there, I know that I've just flashed it up on the screen for people who are watching the YouTube version of this, and obviously the web address as well, caskaleweek.co.uk. But I did notice on the website you've got things on there like you kind of like feature pubs and you do
We
and
do.
beer, I think as well. Yeah.
Well, first of all, we're going to have a brewery of the day.
Hmm.
Depending on when you listen to this, so I'm talking at the moment on Friday, the 20th of September. Strangely enough, our brewery of the day is Timothy Taylor's.
Oh,
But
they've just as
next
we were
week,
talking. Yeah.
yeah, next week we've got great breweries like Oakles, we've got Hook Norton, we've got St Austell. They'll be featured every day. And then we have little minor celebrities who are nominating their favourite beer every day. So you can find that on our social channel, our Cask Marque's social channels, and explaining why they love that beer so much.
Oh wow, that sounds really. That'll be up a lot of people's street. That so yeah, there's plenty of ways people can support. Obviously Cask Ale Week there, but obviously the main one, get to the pub and try some lovely Cask Ale. I mean, one thing I'm looking forward to. I don't know if you've had this before. In Sheffield, we you know like well, at Christmas, I'm going to mention the C word now. I know it's still in September. I'm going to mention the C word, Christmas. You know when the advert comes on the telly of the Coca-Cola truck rolling into
Yes.
town and everybody's like, oh, Christmas is here. We don't do that in Sheffield. We wait for the Bradfield Brewery truck. Well, it's a van, but they have they do a beer called it's Belgian Blue, and it's a.
Yes,
Have you had it before?
I have
Oh,
had it. Yeah.
it's so special. And although you can get that other times a year if you look around for it, and I know they've during COVID they did sort of like these kind of like middle of the year releases of it to cheer everyone up during COVID and stuff like
Mm.
that. I kind of flat out refuse. I will not drink it until the 1st of December to protect its own little
Oh, is that
traditions
your
with myself.
Christmas
It's
beer?
my Christmas beer, yeah, and that's the other thing about there's a lot of Christmas. The people do they do the cask beer do like to theme up and have their own Christmas beers, don't they, and so on.
Yeah, they do. They do. And I always say to pubs, look, if you're going to have a Christmas beer, something that's named after, I don't know, Rudolph
Yeah,
or turkeys or something like that, get it on the 1st of December. Don't wait until the
No.
23rd.
Yeah. People
Get
do
it
it,
on.
don't they? People do it. People will see it and they'll go in a lot of the same ways as you walk into, craft beer bottle shops and so on, and you'll see these can designs and, oh, I'll have that because the can looks amazing. It's the same with the sort of pump clips. If you see something seasonal and Christmassy or whatever, and I've seen ones with like, lights on them and the ones that make noises and all sorts of stuff as well.
Yeah, yeah, it gets very, very creative around Christmas time. Yeah.
Brilliant. Well, Annabel, it's been really nice chatting with you, and I know we'll be getting you on again soon because there's lots of other stuff outside of Cask Ale Week that I'd love to chat with you about your history and obviously the educating that you do and all that kind of thing. But thank you so much for coming on and joining us, and for everything that you're doing for Cask Ale Week and for beer in general as well.
Oh, you're welcome. And if you want to come along on one of my cellar management training courses, we have great fun.
There we go. Don't forget, everyone, to check out, obviously, caskaleweek.co.uk, but also to find out more about Annabel, beerbell.co.uk. Thank you very much.
Thanks, Jimbo. Bye.